I'm a communication major here at Mrs. State. Last fall was my first semester here, and one of my classes was conflict with Comm. And I learned a lot of helpful tactics and strategies, and I realized that I was extremely abrasive. And so he taught us a bunch of different things that you can do to kind of change your way of how you look at conflict. And being a teacher, or in criminology or psychology, you're going to be using conflict styles. Earlier we learned about conflict styles. I will be teaching another process that's called the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Yeah, was it gonna? I don't know if it's off-centered. Or
we can figure it out.
Okay, I'll just go from there, I guess. So understanding conflict, you need to really be aware of the process of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. There's another one, he's just not up there. I don't know if it's going to work though, because...
Try ending short and then redoing it.
Redoing that?
Or like doing play show then.
Just do it that way.
Yeah. Oh, does it work that way?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, it's fine.
It'll be.
It's going to get kind of awkward later because the answer is like right there, but I'll try to talk about it before we get there. So the first horseman is called, or the part of conflict. So when we do fight, we fight about things that we normally want or a goal that we want to get to. We call that perceived incompatible goals, and because they're incompatible, that causes the fight between 2 people. Most of the times, they think it's over scarce resources. Some of those can be power between a student and a teacher. You're trying to, enforce them to do rules or do homework. Another one can be involved with self-esteem. And then it can be actual objects like toys, books, and even romantic partners. So when you're a teacher, you can have conflict between another teacher or a principal. So that's kind of how conflict starts. There's 2 types of conflicts. It can either go to constructive conflict or deconstructive. For the sake of my presentation, we're going to do the deconstructive way. So the first horseman is called criticizing. And ignore that. You kind of have the answer. But anyways, so the first horseman is criticizing. So when we criticize people, what do we say? Does anyone want to give an example?
Why do you always do that?
It's a good one. Anyone else?
I hate when you leave your socks on the couch.
Or you never take the trash out. You are so annoying. Why do you always bug me? I'm trying to read. We start off as a very you're blaming the other person. This is really crucial because in the beginning of a conflict, criticizing makes it go from neutral to negative very fast. And one thing that we can try to avoid this first one is by using I statements and ask for specific change. So, husband, I know that your feet hurt and you want to take off your socks, but I appreciate if you took them to the laundry. Or, I'm trying to read, would you mind watching TV in another room? So kind of stuff like that. So who's more likely to criticize, men or women?
Women.
Okay, so let's say that you don't try to avoid it and you do criticize. What happens when you criticize, or when you are criticized? How does it make you feel?
Defensive.
Yeah. Defensive, exactly. So when we become defensive, what type of words do we use back towards people? Aggressive words like, you just don't want me to put the socks on the couch because you're OCD and you love clean. Like you're crazy. You kind of deflect all your problems onto the other person. Also, you ward off attacks. No one likes to be criticized. Like, your hair looks frizzy today. Like, well, I'm sorry, have you looked in the mirror today? It goes back and forth like ping pong, and this process can last for a very long time. So a way that we can avoid it is by describing the problem, coming up, brainstorming with solutions, more than one. Try to empathize with the person, like, oh, your hair looks nice today, but it's a little humid. Is that why it's, try to... That's not the best. You don't want to put the other person down. You want to make sure that you're equal. So if you're a teacher and someone's doing something wrong, try to make it so you're not being overbearing, like I'm wearing the teacher pants, but do it in a positive way. Also, be flexible and open. If you're not okay with the solution that you've come up with, say, I'm not really comfortable with that. Let's try to work on this problem some more. I'm sure we can find something that we can both agree on. But let's say you don't, and you continue the ping pong, and you become so defensive that all of a sudden the other person shuts down. The third one is called, everyone close your eyes really quick. The third one is called stonewalling. This is by far the most toxic level that you can get to because it pretty much shuts off all communication. You can no longer see their nonverbal cues if they're upset. The person does not want to talk. It's extremely destructive to the relationship. Literally all trust and openness are forever lost because that other person sees you as so abrasive that they cannot open up to you anymore. So they literally don't say anything, they'll just sit there, and it's really hard to get them back into the conversation. But who is more likely to do this, men or women?
Men.
And this really is frustrating to women because they want to know what's wrong. They ask you, well, what are you feeling? Are you mad? Are you upset? Don't do that. The best way to get out of stonewalling is to ask their thoughts rather than feelings. Earlier we listened to a presentation about gender and sex. We know that it's a little bit harder for men to open up of how they actually feel, and Dr. Powell has taught us tagging your emotions is very difficult. So instead of asking, are you mad, are you frustrated, are you disappointed, ask them, well, what are your thoughts on the subject? How can we get back into the conversation? Is there anything that I can do? Hopefully that works. If not, you may have to just leave the person alone for a while. It's really hard to get them out of that if they're just that shut down. Literally all communication will be lost. So if that happens and you don't come out of it, the final and fourth one is contempt. This one's really, really hard to get out of. Once you reach contempt, the relationship is functionally lost. There's almost no way that you can get back to the beginning without an intervention or strong mediation. Contempt is nasty mocking, insults, hostile corrections. One that I used to use a lot was hostile joking. And if my roommate, was going out on a date, I would make a joke like, "Oh, ha, see you in the morning," like stuff like that. We had gotten to that point where we lived with each other so long. There were so many conflicts. I hope they watch this video one day. But stuff like that, and if you ever have a comment that's made to you like that, it doesn't feel well. And that person remembers it for a really long time. I remember saying that, and I felt horrible the next day, and I told her, we apologized. But it's also considered verbal abuse, and especially in the classroom, if you see two children going at it, you may just have to separate them. And you can also tell them to say stop, or just leave the conversation, because it may escalate to a point where contempt is matched with contempt, and either the person they don't want to lose, and that's a very unhealthy thing, but don't worry, there's still hope. Okay, so let's say you are in a classroom and there's a conflict that just won't be resolved at all, or if you are in a conflict and you forget all of the horsemen and all the little tips that I'm trying to tell you, there's always the XYZ formula that Gottman came up with. He believed that anger can be expressed in a clear and calm manner. And X represents, you say to the person, this is what's happening. So let's say if I'm on the phone and Andrew keeps trying to talk to me. Instead of yelling at him like, would you quit it? I'm on the phone, hello. I would have my conversation and I would get off the phone and I would tell Andrew, Andrew, I was on the phone, you kept trying to interrupt me, and that made me feel really aggravated. And so that way Andrew knew.
Sorry.
That way he knew exactly what the situation was, the action that was happening, which is the why, and the Z is how it made you feel. So you're not directly attacking the person, you're still kind of opening up. And you know what? Anger and conflict, it's not polite all the time. It's okay to be frustrated, but you have to do it in an appropriate manner. And I think this is a really good lesson that you can teach students and even to teachers and principals and parents. You're going to have meetings with them, and they may not always like what you're going to hear about their child. And if they come back with a defensive